But tonight, back to our debate, we're asking if Mali is finally turning a corner after the first election in more than 6 years and, of course, a very turbulent past 12 months. The country was split in two and there was an Islamist takeover of the north, and French forces came in to repel those Islamists earlier this year. Well, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta looks to have won that election after his rival conceded defeat. A reminder of my guest tonight. On my left, Abdoulaye Maïga is originally from Gao in Mali. He's now here in Paris studying engineering. Good to see you again. Michael Kirtley, an independent journalist and producer of the World Memory Film Project. We've got Eduardo Quay, our very own international affairs editor. And in London, Jeremy Keenan, a professor of African Studies at London University and a specialist on the Tuaregs. Well, before we get back to our discussions, Julius Seeger has this report on the challenges facing the new leader.
National reconciliation, top of the list of the challenges facing the future Malian president. In the northern part of the country, home to the Tuareg MNLA rebels, ethnic tensions are running high. In June, the government signed a peace deal with the rebels that paved the way to Sunday's elections. It included a promise that the new president would negotiate with the MNLA rebels within 2 months of his election victory. These talks will determine whether these rebels will be integrated to the Malian army and will define the status of Azawad, the northern territory they claim. Another potential threat to Mali's stability, the army. It was the soldiers' inability to deal with the Tuareg rebellion that led to Mali's crisis. The future president will have to rebuild the army's reputation and remind his soldiers of their duty to protect Mali's sovereignty. Under the European Union planning mission, the EU will train 3,000 Malian soldiers over a period of 15 months. Last but not least, the future president will inherit a country festering with corruption and an economy that reached a virtual standstill in the last year. While Mali remains the continent's third largest gold producer, its economy contracted by 1.5% in 2012, and today youth unemployment is soaring. The challenges facing Mali's future president are huge, yet the country can now count on foreign financial assistance. The presidential elections have unlocked more than 3 billion euros in aid, promised by international donors.
OK, Abdoulaye Maïga, I'm going to come straight to you, if I may. Once again, I'm sorry about this. Is it time to give the Tuaregs their own homeland, the state of Azawad that they've been campaigning for such a long time now?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's time now or time ever to give the North its own independence. And basically that's because I don't believe that the whole North wants to be part of the Azawad. And as I said, I'm from Gao, parents from Timbuktu.
And just to describe, Gao is on the centre, on that kind of dividing line, right?
Yes.
Between the north and the south.
And
well, no, Gao is very much in
it's pretty much inside the whole Azawad. Azawad is more the whole north of the Mali. And
so if that region was to become Azawad,
Gao and
your
Timbuktu
family and everyone...
all that would be Azawad.
Right.
But I think that the Tuaregs might accept a smaller version of the Azawad.
Well, I think if you look at how the whole French went down, when the French got into the north, everybody was happy to accept the French because not everybody was part of the MNLA. And I believe that the large part of the population, not only the south, but in the north, are not forcefully with the movement of the MNLA. And so I don't think that Azawad is a solution. And I don't even think that they want Azawad.
I don't think the question is one of autonomy or statehood as much as it is one of fair treatment and better control of that part of the world. I mean, this hasn't only been an area of terrorism and discrimination. It's also been an area of drug running.
Yeah, right.
I mean, and the drug running was essentially controlled via people in the south, via people in the government of Bamako. So these inequities that have existed are the first step towards ensuring that the Tuaregs or anybody else in the Azawad would not feel discriminated against and feel that they shouldn't be separated.
All right, so I completely agree with that idea. And so the separation north and south, I think that's not the main problem. The main problem is how to be able to control the whole region. And
but is it also separation when the people of Bamako see the north as either unworthy of better development or as belonging to a group of people who are against them?
I don't believe that that's the conception of, and I don't think that's how people in Bamako see the north. No, I don't believe that's true at all.
Right now they're saying that the MNLA are basically terrorists.
Once again, I don't think that MNLA is forcefully representative of the north.
It's because a lot of people, a lot of Malians in the south put the blame on this latest crisis on the Tuareg.
Through a lot of propaganda.
But
Well,
that's
isn't
the way
it the
they
case
feel.
that the MNLA, the Tuaregs, they took advantage of what was going in Bamako when there was a coup?
No, they actually
and
provoked the
They
coup.
provoked-
Right,
they
but they
provoked the
tried to
coup.
seize their own territory, something by teaming up with Islamists. That went very badly wrong for them and backfired when the Islamists said, no, actually, this is our land now,
Yeah,
this
but
is
at the
part
end
of
of the
Al-Qaeda.
day, a lot of Malians blame the Tuareg for starting this crisis. I think we wouldn't be talking about this if since independence, the Malian state had taken more care to develop the north and to be
And
more
Eduardo, you're
present in the
pointing to a
north.
very good point. They're not, in other words, the Malians are not blaming themselves. I mean, the Malians in the south are not blaming themselves. I mean, the Tuareg did not cause a coup d'etat. The Tuareg did not cause corruption.
That's right.
The Tuareg did not cause a lack of development in the north. The Tuareg did not cause drug running.
Well, I think there's a certain confusion. We're putting in the same hat the Tuaregs, the Islamists, the rebels that came from different parts of Africa, from Algeria, from all those, and we're putting all those in the same hat. And I don't think that the Tuaregs are part of this movement. And as we've seen through the events, during these events, there was a clear separation between the MNLA, between the Al-Qaeda from the Al-Qaeda in West Africa, and so there's a clear separation between these two. All right, and so there's clearly a misunderstanding between the Malians of the South, who have a very, very distant vision of the North, because the country is very big and there's at least 1,500 kilometers separating them from the North.
Let's bring in Jeremy Keenan. Sorry to interrupt you. Jeremy, what do you think about what you're hearing? What is this division between the Tuaregs and the rest of the people in Mali? Is that a real division, or can they all get together and live in one state under one president?
Well, I think everyone's been making a lot of very good points here, actually. That's what I was enjoying listening to them. There is a lot of deep history here. In a sense, yes, Mali, people have got on fairly well over a long period of time, but there are these fundamental differences or problems with the North. And the South has really blamed the Tuareg for a lot of things which they're not responsible for, the drug running, the underdevelopment, the marginalization, etc., etc. One should say that the Tuareg themselves have been a little bit responsible for this in some respects, but I think, in a secondary sort of sense. One point I would make, though, we've been talking about the Islamists here. The beginning of this trouble really went back to the end of 2010, when a lot of Tuareg came back from Libya, and a rebellion had actually been simmering on in this area for the previous 2 or 3 years. There hadn't been any peace, it was there, and in a sense that sort of gingered it up again. And this really was a very serious threat to Algeria. Algeria saw this as a danger because it was absolutely inevitable that the Tuareg would take over, the MNLA that is, would take over Azawad. The Malian army was pretty well incapable of fighting. It was ill-equipped, out of ammunition, ill-led, and so forth. And Algeria saw this as a major threat. And the Islamists that the Tuareg, if you like, partnered with, were basically inserted into the region from Algeria. The AQIM as Algerian-led, with the Algerian Secret Services. Iyad Agrali has worked for the DRS. So there was a big infusion of influence, if you like, or backing from the Algerian secret police to mix up and mess up this whole area and to basically to rubbish the Tuareg. And the Tuareg did get rubbish. They took the blame for this. And they handled it very badly. There wasn't much very smart geopolitical thinking going on amongst them, and that is possibly still the case, actually, amongst their leadership. But they came out of it badly, but in many respects, they were undermined by the Islamists with the backing of the Algerians to the north. And that problem still could come back, I should say. These are very, very deep-seated problems. And they're not really well understood by many people in the South, particularly the Algerian dimension, particularly where the Islamists had come from, the backing, the support they were getting. For example, during the whole of last year, not one journalist ever even asked where their fuel came from. It came from Algeria, with the blessing of the Algerian government. So these are issues which can't really be sort of swept under the carpet that easily. They have to be confronted, they have to be faced up, and they have to be resolved. And it's going to be difficult because the Tuareg themselves are not really homogeneous. There are a lot of divisions amongst them. As the gentleman from Gao has said, there are lots of other people in the area as well. The Tuareg are really roughly a third of the population. You've got Arab populations, you've got Black populations, particularly in the Gao region. And while these populations have lived, contentedly and happily together for a long time. There are little tensions amongst them. As the gentleman, Mr. Maiga, said, it's not just a Tuareg territory, and the Tuareg themselves have divisions amongst them. Their leadership is weak. It's not clear really who is going to represent them in any sort of talks. And the rank and file, particularly the MNLA, may well not take kindly to some of the suggestions that may come out of whatever dialogue and talks take place. So a very delicate situation, I think. And if the new president goes in there with the military as a strong man, that could backfire very dangerously, particularly if there is a big showing of the Malian military, which is really not at all welcome in the north.
Yeah, that could unite the people against them.
It's a hopeless. It's an army that's not fit for purpose. Quite frankly, it's part of Mali's problem.
Well, do you think that the Malian military can possibly make a strong showing anywhere at this point?
No, I don't. I think they can just create a mess. Quite frankly, the longer they're kept in barracks, the better. I'm not saying anything about the UN force. That really doesn't, forebode well. French troops in the area, well, they're going to be there for a while. They can probably hold any sort of tension or conflict.
Well, they're only going to be there a few months, to be honest, aren't they? They're going to be there till December.
The Malian army, and if the Malian army goes in there in its present state, and it is a ragbag army, to put it quite crudely and not very nicely, but that's what it is. It's been badly led, with the exception, I should say, of one or two commanders who, ironically, actually come from the north, one Tuareg and one Arab in particular. But by and large, there's a lot of ill will, a lot of bad blood between the Malian army and the local populations, particularly the Tuareg.
Right, there's a lot of mistrust and a lot of misunderstanding on both sides.
Brought on by the Malian army itself,
right.
Even today. I mean, some of the areas that are controlled in the north by the Malian army have seen nomadic tribesmen being taken away, tortured, sometimes killed.
We've heard about reprisal attacks and that kind of thing.
I'm sure that we've had all kinds of reports on France 24 about that. So I think that there's a distrust, but there's also legitimate distrust of the Malian army because of past problems that have existed.
But what can IBK do then? Because if he's going to exert his will over this part of the country and the army's not up to it, I mean, it doesn't bode well at this point, does it, Eduardo?
No, I don't. I definitely think we cannot count at all on the Malian army. Just an anecdote: I visited the Curicolo base outside of Bamako, where the European Union is training 3,000 Malian soldiers. And when the first contingent of 750 soldiers finished their 3-month training period, the first thing they did is they demanded to have increased pay and to be upgraded in their rank. And they had to actually send them home for a few days until things cooled down. So that is an indication of the state of the Malian army. Frankly, to be very honest, they couldn't march straight when I saw them there in Curicolo. So I don't think the Malian army is going to have much of a place here at all. However, maybe with the French and the United Nations soldiers, they may be the ones to maintain peace. As to what IBK can do, I really don't know. My feeling is that the presence of the international community is the key here. I don't know if the others agree, and the presence of the international community, international pressure, and international money.
Right. I mean, the West has a very strong interest here to get this part of the world in order. They don't want another Somalia. They don't want another lawless sway.
But at what point does it go from being protective into some sort of neocolonialism? I mean, you have a country that can't be controlled forever by outside forces.
But we're only at the beginning of it.
No, I know, but we're not exactly. It's been the.
But the point is, if the army is so weak, the government is quite unstable. I mean, are they able to take control of this?
Well, today
this part of the world? Or do you need outside help? Is my point.
Today, the army is not. The army is not representative of the South. It's not representative of the North. The army is representative of the corruption that's been going on in the different political parties, and so today the army is indeed very weak. It's been misled, and it's uncontrollable. So what IBK can do is try to reform the army, try to put in place an army, and of course, the time being, there is no way he can do this without international help, because today, if the army tries to march anywhere in the north, it's going to be chaotic.
It should be said, though, that there are efforts to bring in other ethnic groups, including the Tuareg, into the army.
I think that the Tuareg
and I think that may be the long-term
They have
solution.
been in the army. It's
Yeah,
not,
but many of
it
them
doesn't date
fled.
from today. They have
Many
been
of
in the
them
army.
left and went and joined the rebellion.
Well, many the ones who fled were in the north, and I think that it's not forcefully because they wanted to flee to go to join the rebellion. It's just that the army was incapable of assuring their protection. The army was incapable of taking care of its own, and as a Tuareg, I believe.
But this
in
was
order
an
to
army that
survive-
was theoretically trained by the Americans.
Theoretically, I don't know how far that theory goes.
Yes,
So, if that was
I should say the Americans did really minimal training. It was
if
very
that was trained by the Americans, then maybe the Americans have not done a very good training. And I hope that the international training that they are to receive is going to be a lot better than the one they received before, because that was not very good training.
Well, it's interesting when you look at this part of the world. I think we might have a map of the Sahel region, just so people understand what a vast swathe of territory this is. It crosses several countries. You've got, there we go, we can have a look at that. I mean, look, there's a huge swathe of territory, and a lot of these Tuaregs and these other tribes in this part of the world, they have links that cross borders and right across the region. It's very, very difficult to contain them within borders, which is, of course, what the West would like to do, so that they know what is going on there and who's operating there, and of course, so
Not
they
only
can
the West
stamp
would
out
like
the
to do
flow
that,
of
but
weapons.
Algeria would like to do that.
Algeria would very much like to do it as well, and of course, the government in Bamako would very much like to do this. I mean, just so you can see, this is an extremely lawless area right now, and the question is, what do you do? Do you need more regional incentives? Do you need ECOWAS, for example, or the African Union to take more control of
Yeah,
this?
I think we need to have regional collaboration in order to be able to control the borders and to define how the different countries can collaborate in order to secure this zone, which has been for many, many years a zone of confusion, with drugs going around, with arms being traded, because it is very vast and no one for the moment has been able to control it. And I don't think that the IBK or any other Malian leader has the ability today to ensure the Malian population that they can control the zone.
Okay, just to bring your attention to another viewer, G. Senogo. I don't know if this is General Senogo, but he's written, the point is not about the Tuaregs, but about rebel groups who do not represent all Tuaregs. So there you go. It's not as clear cut, is it, in this part of the world? But my point is, we can't go on troubleshooting. The French army can't step in every time that the Islamists get too powerful in this part of the world, and we can't throw billions of dollars at the problem either. So looking at a longer term solution, it's quite tricky, isn't it?
Well, I think that the longer-term solution has to do with the regional organizations. And these countries have proven that they are at the moment capable of securing their borders and securing their people. And eventually, like organizations like ECOWAS will have to step in and will have to create, show that they can do that they can have these responsibilities. But that's going to be a very long time. We have to remember these are among the world's poorest countries. They have very few resources. And so for the moment, neo-colonialism or not, they're going to have to rely on the international community and on international aid. Hopefully, the international community has learned enough now so that it will insist on and battle against corruption, for example, and make sure that the aid goes where it's supposed to go. We will see that. I agree with the professor that I don't give much. I'm not very optimistic about UN troops either. I think the record has been pretty poor, especially in Africa. But we will see what they do now, and what the aid agencies do.
Yes, come in.
Could I make one point? We talk about the international community. I should say that the Americans, British, and French have actually played a major destabilizing role throughout the entire region over the last decade, largely by backing Algeria, which in itself has been the major destabilizing force in the region. And that has not changed, it's getting worse. And what we're seeing all around this area, and we have to look at it as a region, is a deteriorating situation in Algeria. Libya is in complete chaos now. Niger is very fragile. There are a lot of very difficult things going on there. That's incredibly delicate. And Mauritania is looking a little more fragile, literally over the last few days, with the call for elections and the opposition refusing or saying they're not going to take part in them. So all around this area, we have deteriorating situations, I think, in terms of security, for which the West must be held very largely responsible for its overall policy in the wider, bigger region. And we cannot just look at Mali on its own without that wider regional context, because it's part of that wider context. And in that sense, we cannot, in a sense, put all our faith, certainly in either the Americans, British, or the French, who must take a major share of the blame for what has happened in the region as a whole.
Okay, let's see how some of the international media and indeed the social media as well have been dealing with this story today. James Creedon has joined us in the studio. Let's go over and say hello to him. Hello there, James.
Good evening, Laura.
And yes, first of all, you've been getting some reactions from the politicians themselves.
That's
who
right.
have taken to Twitter.
That's exactly it. Now, Soumaïla Cissé basically conceded via social media, or at least partly via social media. My family and myself have been to see Mr. Keïta, the future president of Mali, to congratulate him on his victory. May God bless him. Now, that was posted late last night. The following morning, there was the response also via Twitter of IBK, as he's known, Keïta,
Who is yet to make a public address since
we've had all of it. He's more or less acknowledged what Cissé said via social media. Some photos of the visit of my younger brother, he calls him. So it's extremely warm, friendly language.
Abdullah, is that a little bit patronising in your view? Cissé being called my younger brother by IBK. What do you make of that?
I think that it's just how the society works. He calls him his younger brother because they've worked together and he's been his prime minister when Cissé was Minister of Finance, and so they have a history together. And so I think the point right now is to show that although Cissé has lost the election, he's still willing to collaborate and he's trying to do his best so that there are no conflicts in the country.
More of a friendly gesture.
Exactly.
And indeed, it has been picked up on headlines as very much a welcome gesture. A dignified loser for RFI's website, maliweb.net, is saying that he is in defeat. He has transformed his defeat into a semi-victory. Elsewhere, you can see an ad there as well for IBK. Congratulations, that's probably from his own camp, I would imagine. A fine example of Malian democracy in action. So essentially, Cissé is very dignified, his dignified response has been lauded in the media. But you do have some pointing to the fact that just 24, 48 hours ago, the tone between the two camps was a lot less friendly, with accusations of fraud in Cissé's camp and IBK's camp pointing the finger at sore losers. So some have been saying, hold on a minute, was there some deal behind the scenes? Why has the tone sort of shifted so radically? Now others are tweeting what we can't be sure of this response, but I've seen it quoted on Malian Twitter users' accounts on a number of occasions, saying, no, I do not want a job. He won, let's let him work, essentially. So that quote is being attributed to Cissé. There is also this Malian blogger, Askia Mohamed, who is saying, look, actually, this gesture of Cissé is twisting the necks of those birds who were auguring bad fortune. I think that sounds better in French than in English. Who were repeating incessantly the risk of post-election crisis. Anyone who says this, they're just taking one model and trying to apply it to all countries, presuming that there will be a crisis after the election. So this Malian blogger Askia Mohamed saying, well, we've proven that that's not the case. Okay,
Michael Courtney, what do you make of this? There seems to have been a bit of a change in tone from how this was being covered a few days ago to how it is now. Now that Cissé is being seen as dignified and statesmanlike for graciously accepting defeat.
I think that, of course, Cissé did act very graciously, and I certainly wish IBK all the luck in the world. But I also think that if there's not a crisis, there's a problem. In other words, you need to. That means that they're going to act as if there is no problem. There's got to be a serious negotiation, serious problems, and serious discussions, and maybe even a little bit war of words, so that the Mali is going to move forward. If this all happens like we're all great guys, they're hiding the truth.
I don't want to be a party spoiler, but I have thought all day that I just wonder, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist type of person, but I just wonder how much pressure the international community put on Cissé to say, look, you've lost, we're not going to put up with any games here. It's just a question I throw out. It's
an interesting point because Laurent Fabius, the French Foreign Minister, and François Hollande were very quick to jump in and congratulate the victor when, as we've said, he himself hasn't even come out and spoken in public yet. So there's certainly a valid point, Eduardo.
And it is a little bit strange that just a few hours ago, just mentioned a few hours before, they were talking about fraud, et cetera, and then suddenly he goes to Keita's house and congratulates him. And I just wonder what was going on behind the scenes. Maybe nothing, but it's hard to believe.
Well, conspiracy or not, if it's in the interest of avoiding conflicts after the elections, then I think it's better that he had acted this way rather than continuing into the idea of there being fraud. And I think with the results that are going to come out, Cissé does not want to sound ridicule at the end if there's 75% against 25, because even if fraud there would not be a 50% of the population of the votes would have been frauded. So I think that Cissé came to realize that no matter what, even if there was cheating, that's not going to solve the problem.
Apparently, we don't have any figures, but apparently Keita did have about 80% in the Bamako area.
We're going to end on a positive note, I think.
Well,
positive,
got a bit of music somewhat positive.
Well,
this is a Malian rapper by the name of Am Koulel, who's been recording in New York. Now, he says, look, everybody knows that France has been directing this election, so he's very cynical about France's involvement.
He agrees with Eduardo.
He said essentially, look, if you've asked for help, for outside help, then, there is some sort of a quid pro quo. That's essentially what he's saying. I'm paraphrasing. But he said, really what matters to Malians is stability, turning over a new leaf, to stop this feeling of insecurity and to have a charismatic leader. So this is a song called Vote, actually, which he's been recording. I think we should be able to listen to some of it now.
Démocratie dans mon pays, démocratie au Mali, démocratie.
All right, well, democracy in Mali, that's basically the sentiment of that song. And
a little
voting.
bit of Malian rap to end tonight's programme. I hope you agree. Thank you very much indeed,
Thanks,
James. Thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, Michael Kirtley. Thank you, Abdullah. And thank you to Jeremy Keelan as well. Do stay tuned. More news and headlines coming up right here on France 24.
Not sure where I should be looking.